My wife cheated, but not with a stranger. She cheated with my own brother. The feeling of being betrayed by the wife I have loved for 15 years is indescribable. But when the person I trusted the most, the one I called my brother, became the accomplice in that betrayal, I no longer knew who I could trust. This truth didn't just shatter our relationship, it made me question the very values I had lived by and believed in for so long. Both my wife and my brother chose to deceive me, and it all happened in a single moment, when the truth unfolded right before my eyes. I am Ethan, just an ordinary man living in New York, working in finance. My life had always been considered perfect: a stable job, a peaceful family, and a wife I deeply loved, Sarah. We had been together for 15 years, sharing every joy and sorrow, building a life that I thought would last forever. But recently, everything started changing, subtly, almost imperceptibly. Sarah began coming home later. Our date nights, which we used to love, became non-existent. She grew distant, no more late-night conversations, only hurried glances and heavy silences. I thought maybe it was work stress, or maybe I was overthinking things. But then one night, I saw Sarah's phone on the table. The screen lit up. I couldn't help but glance at it, and then I saw them. Strange messages, not from friends or colleagues. These messages were filled with words I had never heard before. At first, I convinced myself they were just harmless jokes or work-related matters. But as I read further, I realized something was off. These weren't normal conversations. There was an odd familiarity, cryptic exchanges, and responses that didn't sound like the Sarah I knew. One particular name kept appearing, a name I had never heard before. When I tried looking it up, I found nothing. The unease inside me kept growing. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint it. One evening, I decided to confront Sarah about the messages. The moment I mentioned them, her demeanor shifted. She became flustered, avoided my gaze, and her voice turned sharp. Every time I pressed for details, she changed the subject as if hiding something. This wasn't like any argument we had ever had before. I could sense the tension in every word she spoke, and that feeling made me certain. There was a terrible truth waiting to be uncovered. I had never been in the habit of coming home early. My life followed a strict routine, leaving the office at 6, navigating through the crowded streets, and arriving home precisely at 7. But that day, something urged me to leave earlier. A last-minute meeting was canceled. I hesitated for a moment, thinking about stopping by a cafe to catch up on work. But then, an inexplicable impulse made me drive straight home. It was as if some part of me already knew that once I walked through that door, my life would never be the same again. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the familiar street. As I pulled into the driveway, a sight immediately caught my eye. Nathan's car, parked right in front of my house. My chest tightened. Nathan didn't visit often, and if he did, he would always let me know beforehand. I tried to come up with a reasonable explanation. Maybe he had stopped by to borrow something, or perhaps he was just visiting Sarah. But deep down, I knew something was off. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open gently. The house was eerily quiet. And then I heard the sounds. Not normal conversation, intimate sounds. Soft laughter, ragged breathing, whispers too low to make out, but unmistakable in meaning. My whole body tensed. I took slow, deliberate steps down the hallway, as if walking a tightrope between reality and a nightmare. And then I saw them. Right there, in the dim light of the living room, Sarah sat on Nathan's lap, their bodies entwined, their kisses hurried and desperate. His hands clung to her, and she leaned into him, surrendering completely. Everything in front of me froze. For a moment, I heard nothing. No breathing, no sounds from the outside world. Only a cold, undeniable truth. The wife I loved, the brother I trusted most, betraying me in my own home. I don't know how long I stood there. A second? A minute? A lifetime? Then Sarah lifted her head. Her eyes met mine. Horror flashed across her face. She jerked away as if waking from a trance. Nathan turned, his eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if searching for words. But no words came. Only silence. A silence that pressed down on my chest like a crushing weight. Numbness slowly gave way to a tidal wave of emotions, rage, pain, disgust, all crashing over me at once, threatening to tear me apart. Sarah stammered something, but I couldn't hear. Every excuse, every explanation, meaningless. I looked at them one last time before turning away. No yelling, no explosion of anger, just emptiness. And I knew in that moment, everything was over. I stepped out of the house, but my legs felt unsteady, as if they no longer belonged to me. The air outside was cooler than usual, but I couldn't feel it. The world around me kept moving. Cars still passed by, neighbors still laughed and talked. But for me, everything had collapsed. Was this real? Not a nightmare, not a mistake that could be undone. Everything I had ever believed in, everything I had built, had been destroyed in a single moment. I looked down at my hands, they were trembling. My whole body felt out of control, partly from anger, partly from the sheer impossibility of accepting this truth. It wasn't just Sarah who had betrayed me. It was Nathan, my own brother, the person I once considered my best friend, the one I trusted more than anyone. He was the one who enabled this betrayal. What was their excuse? That I hadn't paid enough attention to Sarah, and the solution was to sleep with my brother? A bitter laugh escaped my lips, but it faded quickly. The pain remained. I had loved Sarah with everything I had. I truly believed she was the one person who would always stand by me, that what we had was unbreakable. Yet in just one moment, it all vanished. It wasn't just physical betrayal, it was emotional betrayal. Sarah chose Nathan. Nathan chose to betray me. And me, I was left with nothing. A sharp pain tightened in my chest, as if someone had driven a fist straight through me. I had always imagined that if I were ever betrayed, I would explode with rage, that I would scream, break things, demand answers. But now all I felt was emptiness. No tears, no shouting, just a void stretching endlessly inside me. I took a deep breath and turned to look at the house, the place that once made me feel safe, the place I had once called home. Now it was nothing but an empty shell, filled with lies. I knew from this moment on, there was nothing left between us. I drove aimlessly, letting the road pull me farther from everything. My mind was no longer in turmoil, no longer burning with anger, only quiet, cold emptiness. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't stay in a relationship where trust and respect had been shattered. There was nothing left to salvage. The next day I returned home. Sarah was waiting, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She wanted to say something, but I didn't care. I didn't need to hear any more explanations. She tried to hold on to me, begged me to reconsider, but I had nothing left to give. I packed her things into a suitcase. Each item reminded me of memories. The days I once thought were happy, the moments I had believed would last forever. But now they were meaningless. When she left, there were no goodbyes, no tears, no arguments. The door closed and I stood there in silence. I took a deep breath. A strange sense of relief washed over me. No more lies, no more pain every time I looked at her or thought about my brother. Only me, alone. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I knew I would start over. And I would never let anyone hurt me like that again. The first days after Sarah left felt strange. The house suddenly felt too big, too empty. No more sound of her footsteps in the kitchen in the morning. No more scattered conversations over dinner. No more traces of a marriage that once existed. But there was a void even greater than that. The silence from Nathan. I had cut him off the moment I caught them. No calls, no texts, no explanations. He tried to reach out in the beginning, but I never picked up. What was left to say? The person I once called family, the brother I trusted more than anyone, had stabbed me in the back. For a whole year, he lived with that lie. For a whole year, he looked me in the eye and felt no remorse. If I hadn't caught them, how much longer would it have continued? Sometimes I wondered, did he regret it? Did he feel ashamed? But then I realized the answer no longer mattered. I didn't need to know how he felt. I didn't need to carry the weight of this betrayal anymore. And so, I decided to start living for myself. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had unintentionally neglected in the whirlwind of work and marriage. They welcomed me as if no time had passed. We drank beer, reminisced about the past, and for the first time in years, I laughed. Truly laughed. I returned to hobbies I had abandoned. Morning runs in the park, feeling the sharp, cold wind against my skin. Late night reading under the dim glow of a bedside lamp, without worrying about someone waiting for me in bed. Spontaneous trips to places I had never been, just to feel the freedom I had lost for so long. One afternoon, as I sat alone in my usual cafe, my phone buzzed. A message from my brother. "Ethan, I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm truly sorry. I was wrong. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just want you to know that I regret everything." I stared at the message for a long time. Then, without replying, I deleted it. Some mistakes can never be undone, and some people no longer have a place in my life. As time passed, I came to a realization. I didn't need Sarah to feel whole. I didn't need Nathan to feel like I had a family. I once thought that losing them meant losing a part of myself. But in reality, I had just rediscovered who I was after years of losing myself. No more pain weighing me down. No more anger or regret. Only me, stronger, freer, and ready to move forward without fear. As time passed, my life settled into a new rhythm. The old wounds no longer ached. Only fading memories remain. I didn't think about Sarah much anymore. She had become a distant part of my past, a chapter I had no desire to reopen. Then one day my phone rang. Her number. I stared at the screen but didn't pick up. After everything, what could she possibly have left to say? A message came through immediately after. "Ethan, I know you don't want to hear this, but I still love you. I'm sorry, please just talk to me." I didn't reply, but she didn't give up. She called again, once, twice, and then more. I hesitated. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. It was just, I knew that some things, once broken, could never be whole again. Finally, I decided to answer. Her voice trembled with regret. She said she was sorry, that she still loved me, that if she could turn back time, she would do everything differently. I listened silently without interrupting. When she finished, I simply replied, my voice calm and steady, "It's over." A long silence stretched between us. She whispered something, maybe one last apology, maybe one last desperate hope. But I didn't care anymore. The call ended. I set my phone down and looked out the window. No more burdens, no more past dragging me down, only the road ahead, and this time I walked forward without looking back.